Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We just finished up talking about the impact of Karl Anthony Towns' injury, and now we are going to be sticking in the Western Conference with a different injury update, and that is with LeBron James and the Lakers. He left early in that matchup with an ankle injury. Now, he missed the first game coming out of the All-Star break with an injury to that same ankle as well. So this becomes a little bit concerning. I've been pretty steady on how I've felt about the Lakers throughout the course of the year, that no, you don't necessarily want to play them in a playoff series. I still think that LeBron James can elevate his play to a level that makes any series competitive, and you don't want to get in the way of that. But at the same time, there are a lot of concerns with this team, and while to some degree the supporting cast issues have dwindled some, at least you can at least trust some of them to be reliable on offense. The Lakers defense has still really struggled for a while now. We saw them have a very bad February where they were 19th in defensive rating, and it hasn't gotten much better since then. They did have a nice defensive performance the other night when they played the Thunder, so credit there. But they take a step back with this loss to the Kings, who are sitting as the 7th seed, one of these other teams that the Kings are fighting for playoff spots with. And it might be a little bit overstated at times, but this idea of trying to be a 7th or 8th seed over a 9th or 10th seed in the play-in tournament is a big deal to a fair degree, I suppose. When it comes to when you are a 9 or 10 seed, you have to win 2 games, and the second game is guaranteed to be on the road in a do-or-die position, as opposed to being in the 7th or 8th, having multiple chances to win and guaranteed at least one home game. So the Lakers are trying to climb up in the standings here. The Kings going into this game were just 1.5 games above them, and this sets them back in a couple different ways. Of course, with the result itself, this wasn't a very competitive game. The Kings were up by 20 in the third quarter. They were running up and down the court on the Lakers. And to make matters worse, LeBron James ends up leaving this one with this ankle injury. And it's now being speculated that LeBron might not be playing in the second nights of back-to-backs down the stretch of this season. And while making sure that he stays healthy is more important than, for the playoffs that is more important than the idea of them winning these regular season games and worsening the injury, it still is a big deal. Now, if you look at the Lakers' schedule down the stretch of the year, it looks like they only play 2 sets of back-to-backs down the rest of the year. So again, nothing to necessarily overreact about, but still a concerning sign if you are a Lakers fan and you are hoping that they can sort of come into shape as a true contender. That sort of feels like a long shot at this point. Now, I suppose it depends on what your definition of is contender. When it comes to them winning the finals, I don't see it. I don't think that this team can win 4 consecutive rounds. I think that they could be a very scary first round matchup, and we just talked about the Timberwolves potentially losing Karl Anthony Towns for a series. I still would pick the Wolves over the Lakers in a series, but that is a big time development. The Lakers have some of that size to match up against the Timberwolves. I just referenced the win that they had against the Thunder earlier this week. That's a series where, fully healthy, I definitely think that the Lakers could steal that one as well. And what we saw with them last year is be able to capitalize on being a 7th seeded team, going up against the 2-seeded Grizzlies, who had lost their starting center in Steven Adams and some of that size, and the Lakers were just able to overwhelm the Grizzlies physically. That was a young team. There's a lot of parallels that could be there to the Thunder as well. So I wouldn't rule them out for, potentially being a scare for a couple teams in the playoffs, but that also requires them making it through the play-in tournament in the first place. And for me, it's kind of hard to imagine that in these do-or-die games that LeBron would not be able to show up and this Lakers team would just fold. But you have the Warriors playing some of their best basketball. They just put on a rout of the Milwaukee Bucks last night after being embarrassed by the Celtics before they came back out and made a statement win. And for as bad as that loss to the Celtics did look at the time, you look at the Warriors here, they are 7-3 in their last 10 games, and they have been a significantly better team since Draymond Green returned from his suspension. And I just feel like with this Lakers team as a whole, they take a step forward, but then they take 2 steps back at the same time. And ultimately, for me, again, I think that LeBron James is able to will his team to a win, but if he's in a 9-10 situation too, having multiple of these opportunities, playing some of these other offenses that have perimeter scoring, that has been also a little bit harmful for the Lakers as well. They don't have a point of attack defender on the defensive side of the ball. You have to think who is going to guard Steph Curry. And the Lakers beat the Warriors earlier this year as well in one of the best games of the season. So I'm not calling it impossible. I'm definitely not counting them out, but the odds are really stacked against them right now. And ultimately, I just don't think that this season is really going anywhere. And that was a little bit of the design to some degree when it came to the trade deadline. They didn't go out and make a move, and I don't know what moves were necessarily out there that could have put them in real contention. Considering the lack of assets that they had, I would have loved to see them go out and get maybe a Dorian Finney-Smith along those lines, but when you hear the reports that the Nets turned down a Mavericks offer of multiple first-round picks for DFS, that becomes unlikely as well. And it just seems like the Lakers are what they are right now, and that's a team with LeBron James that can be scary on any given night, but they are massively flawed. And when you take into consideration the other teams in the Western Conference, how from top to bottom this conference does have a lot of talent, I just don't think that they can really see themselves as true contenders. And I don't think that many Lakers fans would tell you that. And again, they're looking to probably retool next year. It's interesting how this is going to play out with LeBron James on his he has a player option this year. It's $50 million. One way or another, he is likely expected to stay with the Lakers, and they'll have some extra first round picks to be able to trade to make another move. What that move still is yet, I'm not really sure. I think that the defense really has to be addressed though with this team, because I think that most of these other teams could really run them off of the floor, and it's just a big time concern for me. And I feel like I'm at a point here where I keep talking about the Lakers in these segments, and it's just because they are the brand that they are. It is a story. LeBron James is, of course, LeBron James, but I think that we're looking at a team that is just a tough first-round matchup and not much more. So I think that I am personally going to be looking to scale back on some of the Lakers content. I apologize for any of the viewers that are, big Lakers people or anything like that, but, I think that just the position that they're in now, it is not looking very good. Especially, you think about the fact that they have been a bad team on the road this season, and that's what it's going to be likely in a play-in tournament game alone, and then be on the road against whatever top-seeded team, should they actually make the playoffs. And they have a losing record against teams that are 500 or better. So they have these sparks, but ultimately I just feel like the consistency with them isn't there enough, and we are going to have to reevaluate the Lakers come this upcoming offseason. But that is all we have time for on this subject. We are going to be taking our second break, and when we come back, we will be moving on to the NFL and talking about the Buffalo Bills decisions, their roster moves from yesterday. So stick with us, and we will be right back.